Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Florida Man 40k podcast. I'm your host, Will Taylor, and today I'm joined, as ever, by my friends Lennon.
What's up?
Returning back from hiatus is Tim Penny.
Hello, welcome back.
I do believe Dan Smith is lost in the warp, and today we are joined by none other than the master of masochism, the prince of pain, the king of carnage, Archon Skari.
Why, hello, and I came because the headline read, Florida man walks into Dark City thinking it would be a good time.
That's right. Today, we are talking about Tyranids. We're talking about Tyranids again. Skari is a Tyranids player, am I correct?
Tyranids? 100%. Yes, Gribblies, especially if you consider all the time I've spent in the arena.
Oh, right on. But now today we're talking about the new Codex Drukhari that just released out, and we have none other than the best person to discuss this codex about than Archon Skari. I've been watching his YouTube videos since, I do believe, 6th edition, back when I was wanting to play Dark Eldar, didn't know where to start. There were very few people on the internet that were, doing guides, doing YouTube videos on the army, but I did find him, and he's been doing this for how long now? How long have you been playing the Dark Kin?
My first trophy was in 2010. So at least 12 years, maybe about 14 years or so with the Drukhari so far, or Dark Eldar back in the day.
Right on. And you've been on top of the faction list for this army for quite a while, right? Like, don't you just about get it every single time?
So 2018 was the first year that I really, or the season, 2018 season, was the first year I took competitive 40k seriously in 8th edition. And I missed out from top Drukhari by only a few points after losing to Mike Harrison and Manny Chima at the LVO. And I literally was like 4 points under the top Drukhari. And then in 2019 season, I didn't go to LVO, planning to, in 2020, go to like all these events like Nova and Adepticon and a bunch in Europe. Wasn't able to go to them. So because I didn't go to LVO, I missed out by like half a point.
Oh my god, that's a bummer. Well,
and then this year I did win Best Drukhari.
Of course,
just gonna say, but of course it was like a morphed half season. So, but I'll take it.
Right on. Well, you're top Drukhari in my heart, anyways. And as I mentioned earlier, you have a YouTube channel as well, and I do believe you have other things going on. Can you just give us a brief description about what you do?
Absolutely. So I do have the YouTube channel, Scadcast, mainly focused around Dark Eldar, which is great right now. However, it's a channel that's dedicated to the hobby in general, doing a variety of things. And I do have like my Black Templars and my Astra Militarum that I play every once in a while, and my Sisters of Battle as well. And I'm a part of the Art of War 40k coaching team. So that's another place that you can find me, being a part of the Art of War crew. Yeah, so you can find me there as well.
Right on. I do like your Just Put Paint on It series as well. I follow you on Instagram. I follow you on Twitch. I'm just a little bit of a stalker, and I do quite enjoy the quality of content that you put out. But anyways, you ready to get into this book?
Absolutely. Now, we'll say,
yes,
for this entire podcast, flattery is the right way to get on the Archon's good books. Just saying, we're fickle creatures.
Don't worry. It's coming your way, man. So we've got both the 9th edition book for Drukhari, and we did get some day one DLC as well. I don't know why they didn't, want to put it into the book, making us shill a little bit of money, but it's okay because Cult of Strife is definitely worth it. Just for myself, I've been so excited for this book. I know listeners from this year's episodes have heard me talking about when is this book going to come out. GW, I've been a very good boy. I need this thing now. I'm kind of tired of playing a gun line. I really want to go fast and eat ass. And this book has so much depth in it. It's I've been reading it constantly ever since I've got my hand on it, and it's just there's just so much here, and there's so much in the Cult of Strife supplement as well. What do you like jumping out at you currently? Like what were your initial reactions to the book, Skari?
So one of the things I like to do when you play an army for a very long time, it's not like you have to go out and like potentially buy a bunch of stuff. So you can kind of look at the collection that you have. One of the things I like to do is I like to take the list that I've been playing and see if it transcribes well into the new book. So that's like one of the first things that I did. So initial thoughts was, cool, it makes my current list better.
Sure.
And if you're seeing good success with a list that you're playing that's, maybe, not like the top of the tier, but that has, good potential, and then you can squeeze it into a new rule set that just amps it up to 11, that's a good sign. So that was awesome. And then, one of the first things I did was kind of go through and read mainly the stratagems, just kind of see, okay, what kind of stratagems we have that I could use with my army, and then looked at more like the unit changes, right? And like weapon changes and things like that. And then I will tell you, it took me, like I didn't catch almost anything in the first read because I was so excited to have the codex in my hands. And I had to like read it, overload, like let go of the book, and then like pick it up like 24 hours later and read it again. And then I picked up a whole bunch of stuff that I hadn't picked up before. Mostly like little sneaky things, right? That you pick up. Ooh, Mandrakes can do this, or oh, the Kronos weapons are strength 5 now, stuff like that, which I think is really cool and stuff that you might miss at the first read.
Right on. Tim, what about you? I know you don't play Dark Eldar, but I know that they're very prominent down where you're at. Ruben is one hell of a player, and he loves his Dark Eldar. What was your first impression when you started looking at the rules for this thing?
Yeah, Ruben and I were kind of bouncing back and forth and talking a little bit, and I know he's been talking to John as well. And Hellions are definitely cool. I personally think that I can't. Right now, Hellions look like they can do on average about 10 mortal wounds if you take a full squad 20, but they are fragile and hard to hide. So I think that's going to be something that's going to terrorize people initially, and then I think what everyone's going to switch to is going to be Cult of Strife plus Dark Technomancer Liquefiers. I've seen that in person, like what it can do, and it honestly terrifies me and just puts you in this no-win situation of tons of grots and racks riding around in raiders. And if you try to charge it, you get overwatched by these, D6 shots, strength 4 plus 1 to wound, AP2 damage 2 guns. Or if you kill these transports, these fast transports, then all this OBSEC spills out with all these flamers, and it's just MSU hell. And then if you try to hang back and you don't kill transports, well, the whole army can advance and charge, and you leave all these transports alive, that equals you getting charged turn 2. And a succubus can take out an entire flank by herself. That HQ is insane, and so is the rest of the Witch Cults and Cult of Strife books. In my opinion, Liquefiers and the Cult of Strife might be the best things in that book.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, and we're definitely going to touch on that a little bit more as we go on, but that's 100% agree with that. And then I know, Lennon, ever since this book has come out, you've gotten in games after games after games, and you did used to be an Eldar player with the Prophets of Flesh. What's your hot takes on this?
Yeah, I had a very brief foray into Eldar. Basically, when the castle was at its peak, I got really tired of playing Carnifexes, and so we played Eldar until the castle went away. But first impression reading the book was that the overall power level went up so much on everything, where Dark Eldar were quite competitive before, but I think it was quite limited what you could actually play with. And I feel like the floor, the bottom Dark Eldar units all went up massively. I've actually been I can't count on 3 fingers units that I don't want to take. Like there's exactly 3 things. I don't even think I can think of 3 things that are just never going to take in this book. I was just impressed by how much went up in power, where there's some things that I think are obvious winners, but everything got a lot better. Like everything got a lot better. And so my initial thought was that I'm going to write a broken list that feels like the end of the world in the first week. and there's going to be 5 of those by the time we're done. And I won't be right. I'll write one of the 5, but that's my initial thought was that we could have 5 different GT winning level lists coming out of this book that are all distinctly different, because there's so much here. And I've gravitated towards a lot of the same things that Tim just mentioned. I've been deep in the conversations, with our good buddy Ruben, trying to solve, as they say, the new codex. And I've been talking to quite a few other Archons, including the Mr. Skari himself. There's a lot here, and there's a lot of good stuff, but there's going to be so much more as people keep playing. That's my immediate impression, is there's so much that we're not even catching yet.
And that's what's got me so excited, because I love the aesthetics of this army. I love the way that they look. I love the models. I personally, when the Incubi got a redo for 5th edition, I've always felt the pull to the Dark City, and just seeing that unit amongst so many other different units getting changed and getting better has got me super excited about this. I went whole hog. I sold a bunch of armies. I painted a bunch of stuff just to get a little extra income, and I think I've spent over $1,000 on this, on getting stuff built for this. So without further ado, let's actually get into some of the rules. One thing that I wanted to do real quick was just give an overview of some of the special detachments, because they do come up later on, but I'm going to go through them really quickly. The first one is the Real Space Raiders detachment. What that is you have to take a detachment that has an Archon, a Succubus, and a Homunculus that are all in the exact same detachment, as well as a unit of Cabalites, a unit of Witches, and a unit of not Homunculus, Rax. The only way to do that is with a battalion or a brigade. But what that does is everything in that detachment gets the keyword Real Space Raiders. They all get their passive abilities for their Cabal, Witch Cult, and Coven. And that kind of gives you a thematic, single detachment that has all of the nice things in it, instead of losing the passives that you used to get. The other way of playing, or the other special detachment for this army, is the I want to say it's called just Raiding Forces. If you take 3 patrols that are all Dark Eldar, then every single patrol is free. So there's kind of a big difference.
You don't have to take 3 patrols.
You don't have to take
if your army is made up of patrols. Each patrol is 0. So you could have 1 patrol worth 0. You could have 2 patrols worth 0. Or you could have 3 patrols worth 0 each. As long as each detachment is a patrol detachment, which does give you a lot more flexibility in building a list, and you start with more command points.
That's true, and that's something I wanted to touch on way at the end. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's a couple different ways to build this army, and not teching into one of the 2 that they give you, I think, is not the way to go about it. But that's one of the sneaky little things that you can get there. But let's, with those things in mind, let's move into in my opinion, the biggest winners of this codex, which is the Witch Cults. They used to take up space on your shelves, witches used to be overpriced, be pillow-fisted, be paper-thin, and not get the job done. And now it's been a complete 180. They are amazing. Skari, what is your opinion on Witch Cults as an overall? Do you have a favorite Witch Cult other than Strife?
I'm going to go ahead and say the thing that I love about the Witch Cults was the subtle change of combat drugs, right? I think that makes Witch Cult quite a viable option, just in general, competitively speaking, and also from a very thematic perspective. And also that, Strife. But by the way, if you're just looking at the codex, yes, you can pick and choose. Strife just wins out as soon as you bring in that supplement. We'll talk about that after, because it cranks it up way past the normal levels of what should be allowed. But a very subtle change that I think is probably the most relevant was that everything got extra attacks. So they just roll buckets of attacks. And all the attacks have AP of some sort, with the ability to get higher AP with either Blade Artists or with some weapons that get more AP, Hydra Gauntlets and things like that. And this in and of itself means that 10 witches are rolling 40 to 50 dice depending on what drugs you roll, but those dice are actually going to kill stuff, they're they're not as likely to just bounce off like they used to, which means they become a lot more relevant in trying to kill things, and that alone just changes the dynamic of what witches are. Because Dark Eldar, like in 8th edition, and as John said, they were competitive, but not because they killed anything. They were competitive because they could play the missions. They'd literally just go contest an objective, right, then die. Then contest an objective, then die. And like you'd be left with 0 models left on the table, but you'd win because you stopped your opponent from scoring primaries. Right? It didn't necessarily mean you killed anything. You just didn't let your opponent play the game. Now it just feels as though our army can physically kill things. We're still as fragile as we ever have been. That hasn't changed, but we hit so much harder. And Witch Cult's sort of the epitome of that. Plus the change to the no escape rule, which don't even get me started on being able to hold like rhinos in combat and stuff. Like that stuff is just so powerful.
That's right, yeah. So no escape changed from you couldn't hold things like vehicles or fly in combat.
You could only hold infantry.
That's right.
Right? So it was only infantry. Now it's anything that's not Titanic. Like it's just so good.
And it's a straight roll-off. How often do you think that you win that roll-off with the Shardnet?
Well, it means that you win ties because it's -1 to your opponent's roll.
Right.
And if they roll 1 higher than you, it forces a reroll.
Oh.
Right? Then you can't have a tie.
Oh,
right?
there's no...
It's a roll-off. So somebody has to win a roll-off. There's no, like that's how roll-offs work. Yeah, so I like it, especially with things that can't shoot into combat, like Custodes jet bikes, for example. They can go take a hike. Before I can hold them up, now I can.
Right on. Another thing that really went from 0 to hero is the succubus. I know everybody's been talking about succubi and how they're these little 60-point missiles. I know for a fact, because I do follow you on Instagram, I saw you with 2 razor flails ready to kit out one of your succubuses as the competitive edge suck. So, like, what's your favorite build for succubuses other than that specific one? Because that comes back to Strife.
Well, that's the big one, right? It comes back to Strife. There are a couple of ways to build the razor flail succubus. Like you could do razor flail succubus with the warlord trait of get 3+1 attack for each model within 2 inches. So say you're going against like an orc army, you don't need competitive edge. You could literally just walk in and go, I have 3 plus you have 7 or 8 models within 2 inches because you're a horde. So now I get 11 attacks +1 for the razor flails. So I get 12 attacks times 2. She's rolling 24 attacks or whatever, right? Like you can kind of do stuff like that. That's not necessarily just the big one, right? But to be honest, I'm magnetizing everything on this succubus. So she's going to be able to go and just do a variety of different things. They are still very, very fragile. If somebody can like mortal wound them, or a Satan decides to like tachyon arrow them or whatever, and they just like disappear, in red mist. And so they're not like unkillable. However, my favorite, in addition to that, has been the precision blows build, and I've really enjoyed it with the Shardnet and Impaler with the Dark Lotus, so that she goes in with 3 damage attacks, and every 6 just does 3 mortal wounds. Like that's just really fun.
Yeah, have you considered doing, because other than Cult of Strife, my favorite witch cult is Red Grief. I love going fast. It ties in well with Reavers and Hellions, making them go really quick. And they have that relic that is the +2 strength AP3 flat 3 glaive. Yeah, you could do punching blows with that as well. Do you think there's merit to any of that?
Yeah, there definitely is. Plus, you get the extra speed, right? So being able to add dice to how fast you move, like add distance to your movement and whatnot, makes them incredibly quick. And I think that something like that can be, you don't necessarily need to take like precision blows, but you could potentially take like, Stim Addict if you wanted to, and then use like a hyper stim to like double all 4 of the rolls from her drugs. So then she could be like strength 8, -3 extra attacks, toughness 5, like there's lots of different things you could do with that. So it's one of the things I like about that unit. She's very versatile.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about doing the stemmatic thing. That's actually pretty neat.
Yeah, like it's not necessarily something that you'll say, hey, it's the most competitive thing that I'm going to run to a GT because I'll use it every game. But being able to just have choices and go, you know what, today I'm going to just run, like for a pickup game, I'm going to run Stim Addict and I'm going to roll. And then, the Stims Addict don't let me roll a 6, which is perfect. So I'm going to get like +1 attack, +1 toughness, +1 strength, and +2 inches of movement, and then for 2 CP I double everything for the turn, right? And then she just goes in with the blood glaive and just cleaves through whatever it is you ran her into.
That sounds like fun. And then I guess one other thing is Hecatrix Blood Brides. I guess let's talk about that real quick. So you can pay 15 points for one of your succubuses to become a master succubus. It gives her the ability to consolidate 6 inches anywhere as long as she's not based, if I'm correct. It gives her access to another glaive that whenever you roll a 6 to wound, it ignores invul saves, which is kind of neat. And I do believe the warlord trait is the one that you were talking about, where instead of making her swings, she gets 3 plus however many models are within 2 inches of her. She also gives you access to upgrading a unit of witches to Blood Brides. For 2 extra points, they get, I do believe, an additional point of leadership. They hit on 2s, and their Blade Artist's ability, instead of inflicting an additional AP1, is AP3. Skari, how often do you think you'll be taking Blood Brides?
Well, it's AP4 technically.
Oh, true. That's right. It's AP3 plus the one that
the
blade has. You're right. AP4.
Correct. I don't think you need Blood Brides, to be honest.
Really?
Like everybody's like, yeah, I think Trueborn are better than Blood Brides, but that's like a whole other discussion.
Oh, well, we'll get to them.
Oh yes, definitely. Blood Brides are great. In Cults of Strife, they're much better because you can reroll wound rolls, right? Like you have a strat for that. Other than that, usually AP4 is fantastic, but a lot of stuff has invul saves in the meta right now. So yeah, maybe against like stuff that ignores AP1 and 2, which is Sisters of Battle, like yes, it'll be fantastic. But I don't like the weapon skill 2 is great. However, you already get that either with a combat drug or on turn 3. Right? So it's like, so I don't know. And then it makes the most expensive troop even more expensive, and they still die to a stiff breeze if they are caught out in the open, just as quickly as any witch does. So I don't like spending extra points on them because they are very hard hitting, but they will die super fast.
Gotcha. And then right before we get into Strife, right before we get into Strife, are there any custom cults that jump out to you? Anything that you see that is worth not taking one of the big 3?
You could do, I like the Berserk Fugue one. I think that one's really good for the exploding 6s when you charge. Anything that gives you more attacks is excellent. And test of skill is not the same, so you can't really say that it's like worthwhile. So out of all of them, I think witch cult custom ones aren't the ones that really appeal to me the most.
Makes sense. All right, so let's get into the Cult of Strife itself. That is the one with the day 1 DLC. The stuff that I've seen in this book is absolutely bananas. I love the competitive edge warlord trait there. That's the one that we're talking about, where if when you're making your attacks, if you miss any attacks, if you fail to wound with any of your attacks, and if some of your attacks don't deal the actual damage after saves, you take all those dice, and with you get to swing again, essentially, with those dice that have not made it all the way to inflicting the damage. And then we were talking about with the Razor Flail, it's going to double those attacks. So a lady with 12 attacks, if none of them make it all the way to the damage step, well, now you got another 24 to do it. So that's absolutely silly. The other 2 I don't know are worth taking. One is you subtract 1 from your opponent's attack and wound roll. I guess that's kind of good. And then the Master Executioner, it gives your witch the ability to reroll the wound roll. Would you ever see that, Skari? Do you think that there's a combo that works with Master Executioner?
Yeah, well, if you have it also, you pick an enemy character that that halves their attacks or whatever, right? So it's like you point at a big creature and make them crappier, and then you get better at killing them. So if your meta is like filled with greater demons and stuff like that, or demon princes and things. Yeah, okay, then that might be useful. You know what I mean? Like, you might find a use for it.
Oh, that's a relic.
As for the, sorry, the relic. As for a like, like the razor flail thing, I could see that being sort of switched, sort of like how they've like comboed or cut the combos of like, you know, extra hits on 6s, explode multiple times, you know what I mean, like that sort of thing. That historically they've sort of like curbed that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's an FAQ that gets.
You think that'll get an
quickly.
FAQ?
Oh, I don't think a succubus that is 75 points or 60 points should go around with like
36 attacks.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, like that's not something that I think will stand if the historical Games Workshop FAQs, and if we're not careful, it'll get like triple nerfed, right? So, however, there are great options in that book. The succubus herself is just, you can make her an anti-horde killer, you can make her an anti-marine killer, you can make her an anti-character killer, you can make her like an anti-tank killer, right? So you could literally just really hyper focus what you need based on your local meta or what is trending in the meta at the moment, and then have like a tool for it. And I think that's fantastic.
Right on. So one of the couple of things that I want to touch on for Strife just specifically, some things that you'll see very often. Dark Lotus Toxin adds +1 strength and +1 damage. It's a relic to any of your succubus's attacks that are not relic weapons, obviously, because you can't take 2 relics anyways. But that's something that adds gives her a little bit more of a punch. You'll see that a lot on the competitive edge Razor Lady until she inevitably gets a nerf. Morvane's Agonizer. This is one I wanted to talk about too. We were talking about Hecatrix Blood Brides. In this instance, you could give this relic to the squad leader of the Hecatrix Blood Bride, and basically it's an Agonizer that says, as long as it's not a vehicle or a monster, if it gets hit, it can't fall back. How often do you think you're going to see that?
I've used it every time.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Not in a Blood Bride unit. Not in a Blood Bride unit.
Oh, just on a regular
witch unit as
gotcha.
well, right? So it's just any Agonizer. And I love it because you can hit like multiple units, or you can split your attacks and then pick one of those units to not be able to fall back. So if you, say, multi-charge into 2 different units, you can like direct all your attacks into one and hope to kill it. But then like split your whip attacks to hit both, just in case one or the other decides to either run away or whatever. You can like hold the one that you need to hold. It's excellent. Just a no fallback for no roll whatsoever. You just need to like hit with a Hecatrix that has anywhere from 4 to 5 attacks or whatever, based on 4 or 5 attacks based on like combat drugs and stuff. Like, that's incredible. That's really, really good.
It's really good. And you can only get these relics if you have a Cult of Strife Warlord. Does giving a Cult of Strife lady a Warlord trait fulfill that, or do you actually have to have a detachment where your Warlord is the Cult of Strife lady?
So that is something that we're waiting for an FAQ on. It's something I have brought up with GW team. As it's worded, the way I read it, it's you only get a free one if you're like Succubus is your Warlord, right? However, people read it as if you need to have a Succubus Warlord to just have access to them. So you can't use the strat to unlock them, essentially, which is another way of reading it. I'm not saying anybody is wrong or anybody's right. I hope they clarify it, essentially. As of now, I have been making my Succubus the physical Warlord to make sure that there's no gray area, and then just using the Tolerated Ambition strat on both my Archon and my Homunculus, and then the relics on them are bought but with the strat, right? So I can have access to them with no issues.
Gotcha. And then let's talk about the strats real quick. I'm just going to blow through these real quick. Not going to name any names, but basically Cult of Strife gives you access to fighting twice. That's your base one out of the normal codex. It gives you access to reroll to wound rolls on, I do believe, infantry, which is huge. That's one of the DLC ones. There is a stratagem that if one of your infantry or biker units outright murders a unit in close combat, you can pay 1 command point and give that unit a 4-up invulnerable save, which definitely helps with the whole getting stuck out in the wind kind of deal after you've just annihilated something and not be able to consolidate into something else and trap it. That gives you your ladies a little bit more surviving power. There's one here where
I will say this is I want to rehash that. If this, the 4-up invulnerable save after kills them, it is crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes up to 2 CP in an errata. That is incredibly good. Being able to charge in a bunch of bikes, kill like a couple of guardsmen, and then have a bunch of, say, hyper-stimmed bikes for T6 bikes with a 4-up invulnerable save, just sitting in front of your opponent's army, like pinning them in their zone so they can't go out and get objectives or whatever. Like, it's so strong. Or 20 Hellions or 15 Hellions that have killed something and then get a 4-up invul save for 1 CP. Like, it's crazy. All you have to do is kill something, which witches can do. Yes. Yeah, I've used this like every single game, and it is incredible.
So good. Don't they also have a strat that lets the unit affected by it just ignore intervening models and ignore intervening terrain? Like, you can basically charge your Reavers from behind a wall, and they can go over the wall, even though they normally can't.
I believe it's only infantry. I believe only like the Hellions, I think, could do it. Well,
no, it actually just says Cult of
Strife.
Strife.
You can just ignore. Okay, cool. Yeah. Then I just don't have the book.
Like, no, right. I have everything pulled up.
You could literally. Like, I do like that. It's giving them flip belts, essentially, which can leads to all sorts of shenanigans. Oh, you think your character is safe behind your screen? Yeah, no. Like, they're gonna jump over the screen and get to your character or whatever. Like, there's that and flawless approach, which for 1 CP allows you to essentially ignore Overwatch, and your opponent can't like set to defend or hold steady, so they don't get like +1 to hit in combat and things like that. Like, if they're in the right defensive position, like that's incredible. A 1 CP ignore Overwatch, like I've also used that every time, because you don't want witches to die when they're.
It's true. I love all of this. I love having a bag of tricks to, in certain situations, oh, this is going to be great. Just pay 1 command point and I get to do this. Nobody's going to see this coming. The bag of tricks that this little supplement gives you is absolutely wild. That's why I think that witch cults are like the biggest winners in this book for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, when I read that supplement and I was going through them, I'm like, I need to be able to use this every time. How can I make sure that I use this every single time, because it's that good? Like, it's kind of bad that it's that good, because at least if GW would have had the original like release date, we would have had the codex in January. We would have played for 3 months with the codex, and then around this time they would have released the supplement, and then we've been like, oh my god, Cult of Strife is amazing, right? But having them both at the same time, it's like, it's a bit of a shame, because all the other stuff, which is really fun, just gets overshadowed by how good this is.
For sure. Well, we'll come back and apply all of the things that we just talked about for witches later on. We need to move on to the more sadistic side of the Darkkin and talk about covens. I know that back in 8th edition, covens were the standouts, having Prophets of Flesh with the 4-up invul save on your grotesques and your racks, being super durable, making a good line to protect your characters. A lot of people used to mix in the covens part of the book into like craft worlds and harlequins, just to make a nice beefy center holding objective guys. But now things have changed. Prophets of Flesh are no longer on top. So, Skari, what are your thoughts on covens as an overall? And we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty.
Covens have changed a lot. So their role of just being like an anvil, where it's just like a meat wall of stuff that's really tough to kill, is not the same anymore. Their durability is certainly gone down. They're not as, so they have that fragility that you would expect from a Dark Eldar army. Yes, they're a little less susceptible to like small arms fire, because they have that 5-up feel no pain, and especially when they get up to the power from pain on turn 4, 5-up invul, 5-up feel no pain, like against 1 damage weapons, that's actually better than than what it was before, statistically speaking. I think covens, you can build them into like damage dealers, right? Like, especially with the fact that Dark Tectomonsters is still a thing. Liquefier guns, Dark Tectomonsters, Disintegrators, Dark Tectomonsters, like, they go hand in hand and just make sure that you kill things. So if you just want to kill stuff at range and have like very good toolkitty style units, that's fantastic. I like the versatility of the Dark Creed Coven, personally. -1 leadership bubble, -1 attrition tests, and the Booga Booga Homunculus, which is like my favorites. He goes around just turning objectives secured off with the Fear Incarnate Warlord trait and stopping people from doing actions. Like, from a competitive perspective, that's my favorite because it physically lets me win the game better. Like, you know, yeah, and I think that's really powerful. But what it does, it gives you those toolkits, right? The Coven, they hit a little harder than they did, like with AP and stuff like that. They're not as durable. However, I feel like there's a lot of value to them. You just have to sort of pick and choose what you want to get out of them with your overarching list strategy.
Yeah, I think that they have changed as well. One thing that I wanted to get back on, I got way too excited to get into the overall of the book. We didn't talk about Power from Pain, and I want to touch on that a little bit because, you know, we did allude to getting on turn 3 with the Witches, so you already hit on 2s, or getting to turn 4 with the Covens, and now your invul save is not a 6-up, it's a 5-up now. So let me touch on that real quick. You know, that's my bad. Power from Pain is a special ability that all Drukhari get as long as the entire army, every single detachment is either Drukhari or unaligned. And you get a sequence of powers based on what turn it is, and they're all cumulative. So first turn, you get a 6-up invul save. Second turn, you're able to advance and charge, which definitely helps witch cults get into combat faster. Turn
everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, but
helps absolutely everything.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah, it is really good. Turn 3, you're able to hit on 2. You get +1 to hit, excuse me, and vehicles are able to shoot in close combat without incurring the -1 to hit penalty with heavy weapons. Turn 4, everybody gets a 5-up invul save. In turn 5, your ability, everybody is fearless, and if you are a vehicle with a stat that degrades, you count your wounds as double for your overall stat. So like a 3-wound Raider or Ravager will be able to hit on top row. Lennon, I know you were wanting to jump in on Power from Pain real quick. Do you have anything to say about that?
Oh, just that, I mean, it just has to be mentioned in terms of overall power going up. Dark Eldar were already not a slow codex, but they're just... Advance and Charge is just such a different element of speed, and especially on the transports is the most... I don't want to say annoying, because, I mean, I'm talking from the opposition standpoint here, but that's just so strong, where, like, a Raider can potentially enhance ether sails and just go 24 inches?
It's 20...
It goes way too far.
22.
22.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Unless you're like Red Grief, in which case it would go faster. Oh, no, there's no roll to that. Never mind. So it's 22 inches plus a charge. So a 34-inch threat range with a Raider. Yes.
Yeah, still crazy fast, getting exactly where it needs to, and then charging and tying things up. And, you know, as the rest of the book isn't slow, but there's just so much that you can do with just advance and charge on everything. You know, I say this as a habitual White Scar player. It's obviously very good in your melee units, but it's the other things. You know, for me, it was like advancing and charging with impulsors and land speeder storms and tactical squads. That was what made, you know, huge differences, not just the killing units. Just everything getting it, crazy.
Exactly. So the application of all of that will kind of be threaded into the things that we cover. So that's my bad. I got really excited. Look, I'm very excited about Dark Eldar, guys. I just want to talk about all the rules. So we were talking about covens. Skari mentioned, you know, Dark Technomancers with the +1 to wound and +1 damage. Not good for when you're actually rolling to hit, because you do take damage yourself if you roll ones, and those ones are not re-rollable. But on liquefiers, things that auto-hit, those are fantastic. Dark Creed is also my favorite, too, other than the Dark Technomancers. Dark Creed is super awesome. I love the way that it works with Grizzly Trophies and Tormentors on Incubi, which we'll cover later. Being able to use all those combos to make things swing last, make things run away easier, and it also makes your basic melee units like Grots and Rax and even the Talos get +1 to hit in close combat if their leadership is higher than the person that they're swinging on. So there's a lot of application there. Plus, you know, an esoteric kill from afar is a really cool name stratagem, and it also can come up where you can just snipe characters, although I don't know if if that's going to be like too much of a thing, because you can just run characters over with like Reavers or Hellions.
Right, it just gives you the option. especially when using units that you use in Coven, like Kronos, for example, because Kronos can then flame in combat and then say shoot a character out of combat with that strat, right? So there's lots of different things you can kind of do with that stuff.
That's true. So let's talk about Urian just real quick, because he is a special boy. He is locked into Prophets of Flesh. I mean, Prophets of Flesh, I guess let's talk about the change now. Instead of the +1 to their invul save, they now have like situational transhuman. They can only be wounded on a 4 or higher for weapons that are below strength 8. Do you think that hit is something that will make people less likely to take Urian and the Prophets of Flesh?
It's not as durable as it was. I don't think it'll be as popular. Still decent if your meta is a lot of strength 5, 6, and 7 guns. Like if you're still playing against a lot of chimeras, you know, or things with like heavy flamers and things like that, it works nicely. You know what I mean? Or autocannons. You know, people who bring like a lot of autocannons or strength 6 guns, stuff like that. However, you know, Urian is great. He's if you want a homunculus, it's just going to be like super tough to kill and doesn't like die. Urian's probably your guy. He has like a 4-up invul still. He halves all damage. Characters like and monsters for Prophets of Flesh heal a wound every turn. So if you're doing more like grotesques and like Talos and Kronos and characters, like they'll heal up. So if people have to try and like actually physically kill them, or you can just heal them up, sort of thing. So there's value to it. They are definitely more durable than the other covens, like from like even better against small arm fire. But I think the utilitarian aspect of Dark Technomancers and Dark Creed from a competitive perspective is going to win out. So you won't see Urian as much simply because he is tied to Prophets of Flesh.
So what I wanted to talk about, as well as the normal homunculus, you talk about Urian is definitely more durable than your average one, but there is ways to make your normal homunculus almost as durable as Urian. You can pay the extra 20 points, you get a Master Homunculus. He gets the ability to, whenever he dies, he can just stand up on a 2-up, I do believe, with D3 wounds left. Is that correct? Yeah. Correct. And then he has access to a nifty warlord trait I think we'll see very often, which is you can bring D3 racks back a turn, and he has access to a relic that gives him a 4-up feeling pain. I don't know about that particularly, but the other two I definitely like, especially if you're running Dark Technomancer liquefiers with 2 liquefiers on your minimum rack units, like just making sure that those guns keep shooting constantly, keep bringing dudes back, being able to change the construction of your unit by taking your little dudes that are died and put them on a different area to make it easier charge, or steal an objective or what have you. I think that a Master Homunculus is probably a good pickup. What do you think?
I've been liking the Master Homunculus a lot. I've him coming back to life, and of course, I use the Dark Creed homunculus with the Fear Incarnate trait, so it's not. I don't use the bring guys back. That's what I use Kronos for, because they can also heal like models from units. However, being able him to die and then come back and then potentially take OPSEC for one last time off of the unit stuff, it can be game winning. So I do like that, and I do like the Hemox sites, like being able to upgrade one unit of racks to have a +1 to their saves and to ignore the first failed save. Right, so then you can have essentially a nice, durable backfield objective holder that people have to dedicate quite a bit to put in. It's only like 100 points worth of your list, and so I don't, they just stay on the backfield while raiders full of witches and incubi and reavers and hellions pressure the opponent so much that they never really get to see much action. So. And I've been loving that combo.
Do you in the same vein as the Hecadrix Bloodbrides, you actually would bring a full unit of Homoxites every single time?
I have been, and I've been really liking their durability. They're really, really good against just sporadic firepower or out of line of sight firepower. Having a good invulnerable saber off the bat, decent ignore wounds. right? And ignoring the first failed save, essentially every phase like adds up over the course of the game. So if somebody wants to get rid of them, they have to send like dedicated units to like clear them off the objective or put quite a bit of firepower into them. And anything that takes pressure off like raiders and venoms and witches and reaver jet bikes and hellions, you know, that's a good thing. So any gun that's shooting at them that's not shooting at my damage dealers is fantastic, and they have the durability to force my opponent to like put more resources into them than they would normally have to. Changes the math enough, and on the flip side, if they decide not to deal with them early, then they just sit there and end up going to a 4-up and marvel save on turn 5, and then it's really hard.
Yeah, you're never getting rid of them after that. Yeah, I love that too, and I know there's cute little ways to get to that 4-up a little bit quicker. You mentioned that you are actually running Chronos. Are you running like a 2 of or a 1 of those guys?
I'm running 2 Chronos. Yeah, in a unit at the moment. So 2 Chronos. I do like them. I was going to change them after playtesting, and then I noticed that their flamer and their gun is strength 5 now instead of strength 3, and that changes a lot, because they're actually going to be doing damage and shooting, where before they didn't.
And you keep talking about, you use Dark Creed, whereas us down here in Florida are really high on liquefiers right now. So I guess if you're using Dark Creed for utility, you've got damage dealing somewhere else. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, my damage dealers are my Reavers, my Hellions, my Witches, and my Incubi. You know what I mean? Like, and my characters. Like, I don't like the Dark Creed is there to make my Incubi fight first all the time, to make my Phantasm grenade launchers with Grizzly trophies do mortal wounds everywhere, right? There's just so much utility, and in certain matchups, the -1 to attrition is really scary against guardsmen and demons and things like that. Like, that -1 leadership can really do some work.
Makes sense. I mean, that was my first thought process too when I saw them. I wasn't really looking at the custom covens. I saw Dark Creed and was like, okay, cool. I can make my Incubi really consistent, because that's all I really care about is Incubi. But as I've continued, talking to people, not just John, but there was another guy in our group named Jeff who has 20 grotesques, and was like, well, how do I make these things good while I'm building up the rest of my stuff? Oh, well, I'll just put liquefiers on them and zip them across the table. So there's a real argument to be made of, do you want your covens to be utility and support your army, or do you want your covens to hit your opponent like a freight train? So I guess that's, I think, something Dark Elder players are going to struggle with going forward. What do I want out of this particular element of my book? So I guess for you, it's utility.
Yep, for me it's utility. They still hit hard, they hit if they need to, but I have, they're more of a utilitarian. I'm using them for the raiders, for the leadership debuffs, and I'm using them for the Chronos, to be able to potentially snipe a character if needed, bring guys back, be nice and close to the enemy, and the leadership debuffs as well. Plus, taking OBSEC away from units in this edition is, when you play against those 20 Necron warriors or those scarabs that are OBSEC or, things like that, and you just go, you know what, I don't have to deal with that for a turn. I love the idea of that.
Right on. And then just one last thing before we move on to Cabals. I did want to talk about grotesques, especially with, talking about Coven-specific strats. They do have the one where, you pick a Coven's unit and they're able to reroll their 2 wound rolls. With grotesques just kitted out for melee, that seems absolutely wild. Grotesques, they've got, 4 attacks, 5 if you're using the cleaver, all at strength 5 or 6. They're
5 attacks each, 2 damage,
attacks each, yeah.
2 AP.
Are you willing to bring a unit of 5 or 2 units of 5, or are they making it into your army?
I've actually, historically I've brought units of 5, or 1 unit of 5 was what I would bring. Now what I would do is I'd probably bring 2 units of 3 if I were to bring grotesques. And I put them each in a raider with 5 Cabalite warriors, because raider carries 11 now, so you can put 3 grotesques and 5 Cabalites. That'll do 2 things. One, it'll give that raider some OBSEC, right, so that you can grab objectives nearby. Secondly, if the raider explodes, you can kill Cabalites if you roll any ones, and you don't have to like kill Grotesques, which is big. And I think 3 Grotesques is more than enough to do quite a bit of damage for a decent, like modest amount of points. So if you wanted to do that, prevent your Grotesque from getting shot at, put them in a Raider, and then like boost them up the table with a couple of so instead of, say, if you didn't want to run like as many big units of Witches, or you didn't want to run like Reaver Jet Bikes, or you didn't want to run like Incubi, right? You could potentially put in Grotesques as a substitute and just use them a little differently than what they were used in the past.
All right, cool, man. So that's Covens. Let's move on to the last, but I guess certainly not least, part of the book, which is the Cabals. I've been, once again, I've been in the talks with Lennon and with some of our other friends. They're feeling like Cabals are the weakest part of the book. Do you share the same, or is there something about Cabals that maybe we're not seeing?
I like Trueborn, and I like my Killy Archon. So, like, Cabals are not going anywhere when I play them.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I love having those 2 things. And other than that, yes, they're sort of overshadowed by the Coven and the Witch Cult in a lot of ways. Like the Witch Cult and the Coven sort of like do more damage, or they're a little bit more utilitarian, or have like cooler and better strats. What you're looking for in Cabal is just sort of like mid-board harassment units. And if you want to take a Killy Archon, Ginblade and Hatred Eternal is like still really killy. Like he's become more killy than he was. It's a great countercharge unit. That's a little bit more durable in a lot of cases than a Succubus because of the
Shadowfield. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he's like a baby Drazar, right? If you do the Master Archon, where he gets the situational fight twice, once per game. I was looking at,
for like half the cost.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like he's like a budget Drazar.
Yeah.
You could take like Drazar and make him your warlord, and then give up the like Strife relics and stuff like that, right? Or you could take a Strife warlord, and then take like an Archon with like Ginblade and Hatred Eternal to get like reroll wounds and reroll hits and like all this stuff, right? He goes in and he's just like just
murderizes things. So one of the special things about Cabals is the way that they work with Blades for Hire, specifically Blackheart. I think we'll see a lot of Blackheart if we do see Cabals. Blackheart in a Real Space Raiders detachment gives the Blackheart ability of reroll 1 hit roll, both in melee and in close combat, as well as the Relic Writ of the Living Muse, right? I think that's the name of the thing. Gives the ability to the aura of reroll 1s to wound, not just to Cabal of Blackheart, but also to Blades for Hire. And the Archon by himself does
core Blades for Hire.
Yeah, core. Yes. Sorry, but aren't all the Blades for Hire core? Is there one that isn't?
No, Mandrakes do not.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. And then the Archon by himself does give reroll 1s to hit for core Cabal and Incubi, which I think is really neat. So they have an interesting relationship.
And Witch Cult and Coven.
In the Real Space Raiders detachment, but I'm just talking about like specifically the on their own. But yes, in Real Space Raiders, when it is being led by the Archon, he can trade in that Overlord ability for giving everybody in that Real Space Raiders detachment that is core reroll 1s to hit, which I think is very solid. That's why I like Real Space Raiders, but that debate will come up a little bit later on. But I just wanted to touch on Blades for Hire with Cabalites. It's Incubi, it's the Scorches, and it's the Mandrakes, but I guess Mandrakes aren't core, so... but they have a
Mandrakes
utility.
On core.
They have their own purpose, though.
And then in a Real Space Raided attachment, Cabal of Blackheart does give all Blades for Hire +1 on Power from Pain.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yes.
So now Mandrakes, Incubi, Scourge, they all get Advance and Charge starting on turn 1.
That's true. That's true. So, I mean, there is an argument to be made to do Real Space Raiders and do Blackheart. I do like those things, but there are a couple other different Cabals as well. And I think all of them have really interesting utility. The other one that I really like, I mean, I kind of like all of them, but the one that I really enjoy is the Poison Tongue. That's the one that gives you the ability to give poison weapons wounds on 3s instead of wounds on 4s. And they also have the strat for redeploying 3 different units. Is there any other Cabal other than Blackheart that kind of jumps out to you?
I think Obsidian Rose is probably one of the ones that stands out because they get a reroll wound roll, and they get extra range to everything. Like, the range is not as impactful with the smaller table size that we're seeing in 9th edition. However, like, because of the reroll to wound roll, like things like if you want to take Ravagers with Lances or Planes, things like that, like the reroll wound roll actually does help, right? Get those like lance shots in, essentially. If you're doing real space Raider detachment, you'd be hard-pressed not to take Cabal of the Blackheart, because Cabal of the Blackheart just gets so much when you mix everything together into the detachment. And however, if you're doing triple patrol, like, I've been toying with both Poison Tongue and Cabal of the Blackheart. Because the Archon with like Ginblade Hatred, you can use either or, it's the same. Although the +1 to Power from Pain to be able to advance and charge your Archon turn 1 and things like that, that works really nicely for Blackheart regardless. But if you're running, like, say, a couple of Raider boats with Cabalite Warriors with Poison 3+ in Splinter Rack Raiders, so they're getting 20 shots at 24 inches away that wound on 3s and hit on 3s, or if they're Trueborn, hit on 2s, wound on 3s, all of a sudden you could be doing quite a bit of damage at range, and forcing your opponent to close with you. So you could have like a completely different like play style, other than just like aggressive in your face.
Yeah, it can get a little cute. I actually just got a message from, it looks like an agent of Vect, telling me I forgot about the best stratagem for Cabalites, the Agents of Vect. We didn't even talk about that.
James, though, it's not what it used to be. It's
Yeah.
good. It's 0 CP. You pick one stratagem that your opponent just used, and every time they use that stratagem again after, it'll cost them an additional command point. Right, so it's very, very good if there's an army that's built around a stratagem that works really well for them, like Transhuman Physiology and Blade Guard or something like that, right? Like, you can shoot them the first time they use it. I'm going to Vect that, so every time you use it, it costs you double. Or, Overwatch, right? Every time your opponent overwatches, it's going to cost them double. Or you're playing against Shadow Keepers. Every time they use the -1 strength, it's going to cost them double from then on. Or if you're playing Sisters, they advance and charge. Every time they want to do that, it's going to cost them double, right? So you can make people think twice about using a stratagem that they would have just used over and over again.
Yeah, when I first saw it, and I think a lot of other people saw this too, they were like, oh man, I can make the Marine reviving a person actually cost, a freaking command point. But I think you stated that it, or maybe one of your co-hosts stated that it makes that stratagem 0 regardless of however much you tax on it. So don't get cute, guys. You can't make people pay for their busted apothecary strat.
Yeah, it could be worth 10 command points, and the Master Apothecary makes it 0. So
So let's talk about Trueborn. Trueborn keep coming up in this conversation, and I also like them. I love what they do, but once again, the Cabal is still kind of trying to fight to show off in front of the other two choices from this book. So the way that Trueborn work is, if you've got that Master Archon, you can pay two command points. You can pay 2 points per Cabalite to turn him into a Trueborn. You can only get one squad of these. It makes them cost 10 points each. They get +1 leadership. They always hit on 2s, and is there
in the
shooting? That's
they
right.
Hit on 2 shooting.
And then what's the third one? Don't they get one other thing?
+1 leadership, plus 1 ballistic skill, and ignore modifiers when shooting, and and that's it. Those are the main.
So how would you kit out this unit? Because it sounds like you're always taking this unit.
Yeah, I am. 10 Cabalites, so 100 points, making them Trueborn, right? 2 blasters in the unit, a Dark Lance, because they ignore the penalty for moving and shooting. So you essentially have 3 like ranged Meltaguns, essentially, or the Dark Lance is better than a Meltagun. And then I do a Phantasm Grenade Launcher normally on the Sergeant. However, you could go for a Blast Pistol and then use the Raider to get up close and like shoot with a pistol as well. But all in all, having 3 Meltagun shots, or within 18 inches, or 3 blaster shots, to hit on 2s with no modifiers, then Cabal of Blackheart gives you 1 free reroll. So if you do fail one of them, you reroll to hit that one, and then a couple of poison shots on top of that. But they've been great as just like a support unit that's sort of like skirts behind the main line of witches and reavers and hellions, just kind of like picking off like key targets or cracking open a transport or killing mortifiers or doing something useful.
Right on. I actually really, you mentioned Obsidian Rose earlier. I think that's where Trueborn really shine, is Obsidian Rose, just because if you've got them outside of the transport, I know that they'll die if they are, but if you've got them outside of the transport and they're next to their Archon, you don't have use for the reroll ones to hit at that point, and that reroll, the to wound roll, and the extra range does give them a little bit more room to work with. But I know that we're probably going to see Trueborn mostly with Cabal the Blackheart.
Yeah, the 24-inch blasters, really kind of makes them be able to like skirt back and shoot very, very far away, which makes them a lot safer. And of course, in Cabal Blackheart as well, they gain their 5-up invulnerable save starting on turn 3, which makes them, and they're fearless on turn 4, which then mid to late game makes them a lot more survivable in relation to what they usually are. So then they can kind of take objectives and duke it out for like mid-board objectives in a pinch, if things are going south.
Right on. Now, is there a case to be made to where you would rather just take Scourges over Trueborn? Because they have, I think that for 100 points, you get 4 blasters and a very fast body.
Yeah, but that's 5 wounds, not 20 wounds, right? Like, because I'm putting them in a Raider.
True, true.
So, yeah, okay, blasters are great, Scourge are great. However, Scourge are a come down, shoot something, and then probably just die. Whereas Trueborn or Obsec, they sit in a Raider until you crack it open. They shoot more consistently, so you're going to get 2 to 3, maybe 4 turns out of them if somebody's like trying to kill them, instead of just like a 1 turn. Like, I have been considering in a real space rated attachment, like a big unit of 10 Scourge with 4 Dark Lances with a Writ Archon to get reroll hits of 1 and 1 to hit and 1 to wound on a very, very cheap chassis that's about the same cost as a Ravager, right? And then put them in cover and use something like Hunt from the Shadows and things like that. So I think there's like potential for some Scourge builds, especially in real space rated attachments, or if your meta is like huge on hordes, you could use those points to put in like Scourge with Shredders. And those I really like. I love Scourge with the Shredders. They're really cheap, they're very effective, and they will definitely make their points back in the right matchup.
Man, I'm gonna have to magnetize my Scourges. Okay, cool. That's a good discussion. I also want to talk about my favorite, near and dear to my heart, Drazar and Incubi. My friends know that I have a huge crush on Drazar. I think Drazar is the absolute coolest model and character in the game, and I love Incubi. I love the way that they look. I'm so happy that they are almost an auto-include in any Dark Eldar army. Do you have any thoughts on Drazar or Incubi in general?
They are amazing. Like, Incubi are fantastic. If you're playing a Dark Eldar player that hasn't brought any Incubi, I don't know what that Dark Eldar player has been smoking. Maybe they've been going too heavy into the combat drugs. Incubi are like 5 Incubi. Just 5 Incubi by themselves are a fantastic killy unit. I love the fact they can go into like a 5-strong intercessor unit and just nuke it now. Before it was maybe. Now it's just they just kill it. And an Archon helps them with reroll 1s to hit, because they just give Incubi reroll 1s to hit. But Drazar went up in cost, and he it was hard to believe they boosted him to more than he was, to the point where he's like really scary.
God, he's so cool.
He could fight twice all the time.
Yeah.
Like, he fights twice all the time. He's -1 damage. They increased his invulnerable save. They increased his damage to 3. He could do up to 4 damage with lethal precision, And on top of that, they gave them an ability to pick a unit in engagement range, and if you beat their leadership on 2 dice, that unit fights last. Like, that is, like, it's like they gave everything you want in a close combat unit and gave it to Incubi and Drazar.
For, like, cheap. For cheap. They're 16 points a model. It's crazy.
Well, they're one wound.
Yes,
right?
I know. Yeah, they're one wound T3.
And they're a 3-up save, and they have like maybe a 6-up involved from Power from Pain. So like if they're caught out in the open, like any Dark Eldar unit, they're gonna get murdered. You know what I mean? They're just gonna get shot to hell because they're toughness 3. Maybe not as much Drazar because he's a tank, but they will hit you so hard that you will rue the day that you didn't respect how hard they can.
It will make your head spin. I'm so happy with just everything they did with them. You're absolutely right. For the cost, defensively they're awful, but offensively, oh my god, they're so good, so good.
Yeah.
So before we wrap it up with Cabals, is there any warlord traits other than like warlord traits that you would normally pick? Is there like obviously you like not? Do you use Eternal Hatred with the Jin Blade, or are you more of
I do.
Okay,
I
that's
do.
the one
I use Hatred Eternal and the Jin Blade. I think, well, it gives you reroll wounds as well with your Blast Pistol. So I run Blast Pistol, Jin Blade, Hatred Eternal. Yeah, and I make him a Master Archon. So he's like a little killing machine. He goes around and he's a great countercharge unit that can kill. Like he's damage 3 and AP 3 with strength 4. Like he's quite good.
You don't go with the Fight Last warlord trait?
That's the other one that's very appealing. And if you wanted to, you could go for the Fight Last, right? However, because I'm already running Dark Creed and Grizzly trophies, which is a lot of leadership debuffs and incubi that give me the Fight Last abilities, right? I find that I don't need that warlord trait as much. However, if you're not running a bunch of leadership debuffs, it's not a terrible choice.
Right on. All right, cool. So the next thing that we're going to go over is more in discussion with Real Space Raiders and the patrol special detachments, and what they give and how you would go about them. Lennon, do you mind taking over?
Absolutely, I'm here for it. I'm going to let you take a moment to breathe there, get it all back under control. But man, I honestly love that they gave them 2 different ways to kind of split up their detachments between Real Space Raid and raiding forces. For me, the Real Space Raid, since that's the newer one, we kind of had raiding forces before. It has so many more rules, so I feel like there has to be something here. And I've been really trying to figure out the best way to put it together. Again, we talked about it before. It's if your detachment, it's going to end up being a battalion or a brigade just by necessity. Has, an Archon and a Succubus and a Homunculus, and then a Cabalot and a Witch and a Rack. Then, everyone gets Real Space Raid. We talked about Blackheart giving you the most here, and I would agree. If you do a Real Space Raid, I feel like Blackheart is just going to be the Cabal you choose here 95% of the time. What I'm really trying to figure out how this helps is, so the big thing is that you can have the Archon give the reroll 1s, I think, to all of the not Cabal units that literally just don't have access to real 1s normally. There are some stratagems that can unlock it, but otherwise, Covens and Witch Cult usually just don't hit on. They just hit, and if they miss, they miss. I'm really struggling to try to put this one together because, again, you look at the raiding forces, which is the triple patrol. Right now, making all of the patrols cost 0 command point doesn't change the fact that your warlord being in the detachment gives you +2. So essentially, if you have triple patrol, you start at 14 command points before you spend anything. Or double patrol or single. If you can fit it in single patrol, God bless you. I immediately go to triple, but you could do double. There are definitely scenarios where that's okay. It's hard for me to justify the Real Space Raid, but there's so many more layers to the rules there that I feel like there's got to be something, because raiding forces is just take 3 patrols, get extra command points. I'm like, okay, well, this is good. Real Space Raid has so many rules built around it that I'm trying to figure out what it is. The other thing that I want to point out is that if you put Cult of Strife in a Real Space Raid, you get the Cult of Strife trait. The Cult of Strife trait, basically you always fight first, but you don't actually have a Cult of Strife detachment. So for me, again, because they released the campaign book and the codex on the same day, I feel like if I'm taking Cult of Strife, I want a detachment to unlock it. So suddenly it becomes a Real Space Raid battalion and a Cult of Strife patrol. And all of a sudden I'm looking at starting at 10 versus starting at 14. And I have not been able to figure out a way to make that worth it. Skari, have you found anything that...
that's the dilemma,
Yeah.
right? So, if you want all the bonuses of a real space raid, you're going to have to either give up command points and then spend more points on HQ than you probably want to, because you have to take another one for another patrol or whatever, right? But then it gives you all the bonuses of reroll ones to hit, because you're Archon, like for all the core in the army, and then potentially just buffing all your Blaze for Hire units. So it's literally like, I physically like the design concept because it does give you a dilemma. If you really want to do an army that leverages the rerolls to hit from an Archon with a lot of Blades for Hire units, / Witches and Coven, that's excellent. You can just take a real space raid detachment. You don't have to make it too fancy with a supplement with extra rules. If you're fine with just using the codex, it gives you the most bang for your buck, when using everything combined, right? But in a competitive sense, with us, we're looking for like the most efficient use of points and the most efficient way to like build a list and gain, like literally squeezing the juice out of like every inch that we can. Yes, the triple patrol or the double patrol tends to just win out, A, because I already have the patrol to unlock the strife stuff, B, I get extra command points. So and I don't have to like spend extra on another HQ or whatever, so I have more points to play with. So all in all, I think it just depends. If I'm playing for fun and I just want to like just have a pickup game, I'm taking that real space raid every single time, because it just gives me so many cool different options that I can use and just makes all my units better. However, in a competitive setting, yes, I'm going to use 2 more command points. I'm going to use all these strats, so I'm taking the patrols. Right, so I think it just depends on how you approach your list building.
Yeah, I agree. There you can definitely build the list to cater towards real space raiders. I feel like from a pure competitive, which is normally what I go for, standpoint, unfortunately, I think it's gonna lose out. But also, there's enough there that I would believe it if someone, you, Sean Naden, one of those diehard Eldar players, found a way to make this actually worth it. I personally don't see it, but there's enough there that I would believe it if something came out of it.
Yes, 100%. I think you're going to see it. Like, for example, I was building a concept list that's, 20 Scourge with 8 Dark Lances with an Archon with Writ, in a real space rated attachment. So you can just sit there and give them rerolls, and that's about the same cost as like 2 Ravagers. So instead of like running a Ravager detachment like we used to in the past, you can kind of use that as like an element of just cracking open transports or killing monsters and things like that for a very cheap point cost. So, there is some play within that if you want to leverage the rules. However, for the more like efficiently minded, the real space raid detachment, as fun as a concept as it is, does become quite limiting when you want to try and like squeeze the juice out of like all the different publications.
Right on. Well, let's keep it going. I think Will is back with us. I think we just wanted to dive into some of the generic units and stratagems, as well as the secondaries, before we close it out by talking about the games that we have been playing here.
Yes, I'm back from the warp. So I guess when we're talking about the generic strats, I know some of them have come up throughout our discussion, but some of the ones that like really stand out to me, just because I want to make Hellions and Reavers work, is like the competitive rivalry, where if both of those units are within 12 inches of each other, they get +1 to move, and then they reroll their hit-to-hit rolls on turn 2. I think that's really silly, especially with like Red Grief, because then you start stacking on all these movement buffs on these 2 units that can advance and charge, run over a unit, kill them for another 2 command points. And that's the deadly Passover or whatever. Eviscerating flyby. I'm gonna have all sorts of cute names for these strats because I can't remember all of them. But like eviscerating flyby, that is a strat that you would build an army around. Bringing fast Hellions, fast Reavers, just to snipe out characters when you fly over them. With just mortal wounds. I mean, you can make one of those units kill 3 units in one round, have them fly over something, kill it with mortal wounds. Have like a unit of reavers with a bunch of blasters with the +1 to hit drug, shoot into something, kill that, and then charge things afterwards and kill that because they're rerolling to hit rolls. Like, yeah, you're spending a million command points, but you can really have a very impressive turn. Is there any strats that stand out to you, or things that you think that you're going to be using very often, Skari?
I think one of my favorite new strats is Prey on the Weak. For 1 CP, you can give a core unit, reroll either once to hit or reroll all hit rolls, as long as they're hitting something that was damaged, basically that's taking casualties in the game, which is not only extremely thematic, but it's a great way to sort of make sure that you can mop up on straddlers of units to get kills, for example, without having to expend too many resources into trying to kill them.
Yeah, I do like that. That's an easy way to get, as you said, the reroll ones to hit for units that are maybe not benefiting from that. Comes back to the real space versus the Raiders detachments. If you're not taking that Archon or you're not taking that real space Raiders detachment, that is one easy way to get your unit that's already hitting on 2s, reroll 1s. If they're hitting something that got hurt. I will see that being used pretty often in a pinch as well. Some of the things that I wanted to talk about was I say the every Coven, Witch, and Cabal have access to Raiders and Venoms, and even the Tantalus. When you're building your army, you do want to have these types of transports. I guess this is the Raider versus the Venom argument. Which one do you think you're going to be bringing more often?
So it was Venoms in 8th. Now it's Raiders. Raiders just get Dark Lances, which I think are definitely much better. However, I think a mix is still going to be good. Currently, I've been testing a list that has 4 Raiders, and after playtesting it a couple of games, I'm thinking of going to 3 Raiders and 2 Venoms. One of the main reasons is because I run Coven transports that are Dark Creed, and Coven do not get access to the -1 to be hit stratagem. They can't be affected by the -1 to be hit. So a Coven Raider can't use the strat for lightning fast reflexes.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting action.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of running Venoms for units of Incubi, right? To have small Venoms that are easy to hide with my very, very killy Incubi units, so that they are -1 to be hit without having to use a strat, and also a lot easier to hide, in certain situations, especially in tournament play.
Right on. And I guess the most common Raider we'll probably be seeing when people start playing with this book is a Blackheart Raider. As discussed, Blackheart gets the extra turn on Power from Pain table, and being able to Aether Sail a Blackheart Raider, across the table 24 inches, shoot at something with whatever is inside, and then charge afterwards. Maybe it has a shock prow on it. Maybe you pay the 1 command point to do mortals when you charge in. Do you think that that's the most common Raider we're going to see, or do you think there's arguments for a Red Grief Raider or something like that?
Well, I've been using Dark Creed Raiders because then it's a huge radius of -1 leadership and then Grizzly trophies, so -3 leadership, right? So, and they're giant, so you can literally put them all over the place. I do have 1 Blackheart Raider that has a shock prow in my list just for when I go first and I'm I need to charge you and disrupt your whole line. Here goes a shock prow, right? And that's really, really entertaining. So that's something that I just like having in my back pocket. However, whether you choose Venoms or Raiders, the biggest thing I'm going to say is don't put all the upgrades on a Raider. It is a waste of points. Make sure you're focusing what you want the Raider to do. And because the Raider's 85 points, it has access to Splinter Axe, chains, the shock prow, the Grizzly trophies, the Phantasm grenade launcher. Right? If you're putting a bunch of upgrades on a Raider, you're going to spend 110 points on a Raider, or 115 points. that a raider will die to bolters. Like it's toughness 6. It's a lot better than it was, but please don't spend 100 points on a raider. Like pick 2 upgrades tops, and then focus what you want that raider to do in a layered approach. Like if you need a couple to charge up with shock prows turn 1, sure, just buy shock prows for them. If you need them to sit back and shoot with splinter axe, don't spend any more upgrades on them than you need, right? Like maybe the shock brow ones have the extra attacks from the chains, just so they can go in and like charge a bunch of guardsmen or something and kill them with shock prows plus attacks or whatever, right? But please don't spend like 110 points on upgrades on a raider. It makes me sad every time.
So I guess the most common upgrade will be Grizzly Trophies, simply for -2 to leadership, right?
Correct, especially if you're using incubi, or if we talk about secondaries, like one of them, it revolves around making models run away, and in some matchups it's fantastic, right? You just have to, especially when you have leadership debuffs.
Right. And then talking about upgrades, Venoms, do you spring the points for the Splinter Cannon or no? Because I know that the 2 Splinter Cannons makes the little Venom cost as much as a base Raider.
Correct. Yeah, Venom. I think Grizzly Trophies on a Venom is fantastic. Same as with a Raider. Now that Venoms, you measure everything from the hull of the Venom, it kind of increases its footprint a little bit more as well.
How does that's something that I've actually been racking my brain around. It's like a side question, but how does that affect being in close combat? Because now it's not the base; it's the hull of the model. So, is there interesting ways to trap models with like the pointy end of a Raider's prow, or like how does that affect the thing? Because the overall engagement.
Well, just like anything, if your model doesn't fit, you can't go through something, right? So if it can go under your Raider, then fine. But if it clips a Raider, you can use them to tri-point stuff, or pin them up against the wall or the side of the board or something like that. There's lots of different little technical tricks that you can use with Raiders and Venoms and whatnot. The biggest thing there being, if you do have like a shock prow, it's a lot easier to kind of try and get as many different models within an inch of any part of the model, right? So that you can like Tokyo drift your way sideways into combat and try hit as many models as possible with a shock prow.
Right on. And then I guess the last thing I want to just touch on real briefly is there are a lot of generic things, generic World of Trace relics and strats in the book. I know that we touched on Hatred Eternal. We talked about punishing blows and whatnot. Are there any generic things that you would take every time? I mean, obviously you like your Hatred Eternal and your Jin Blade, but do you do the triptych whip with a succubus?
You mean the relic?
Yeah, the relic.
Yeah, depends on what build you run, right? The triptych whip with Blood Dancer, for example, right, is a fantastic way to get a succubus that has lots and lots of 2 damage, poison, 2 attacks. Right? If you're playing a lot of intercessors, that's probably a witch that you probably want to look into. So yes, there's some really cool relics, and it depends on, and that's the thing I love about this codex, is you can either go, I want to go Coven heavy, or I want to go Witch Cult heavy, I want to go Cabal heavy, or like me, I like doing all 3, right? So, and then just picking and choosing things that you feel you're going to use every time. It can be very overwhelming at first because you want to put everything in. However, it takes a lot of discipline to sort of pick and choose the things that you really need for your list without sort of over splurging on things and then not having enough models to win the game.
Makes sense. I guess the only other generic relic that we haven't talked about that I watched your 4-hour Codex review at 6 a.m. Last week. You mentioned the Casket of Flensing, right? That's the relic for the homunculus where you throw a grenade, and if you kill a model,
the Animus Vitae.
Animus Vitae. Sorry, not Casket of Flensing. It's the other one. Yeah,
any character. Yeah. So any character can do that.
Oh, okay.
You essentially just roll the hit with a grenade within 6 inches. If you hit, it does D3 mortal wounds. Unless the unit is 11 or more, then it does D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. And then until the end of the turn, right? So it's not a battle round. So it's only till the end of the turn, so it's not as good as I originally thought it was after reading it again. However, it does increase the power from pain for 1. So the best use for something like that, if you wanted to, because it affects the entire army, right? Like the whole army. Say you're like the biggest issue or the biggest thing I can see with it is, say you have a lot of witches and it's turn 2 and your opponent got in your face and you need to like push them out of your face. You can make sure to throw the grenade, do some damage, and then increase everybody to turn 3, which means now you're getting that +1 to hit in close combat on turn 2. So when you do commit and really push, it's like everything that you hit with is going to really do a lot more damage than it would, just because it changes the math of your hit rolls, right? So you can kind of supercharge your army for that like critical turn where you need to like charge in and do a bunch of damage.
Gotcha. Yeah. I guess that does change things. I thought it was battle round as well. I was like, you could like advance everything and then roll up just that one raider with the guy with the grenade, toss it. Now everybody gets, advance and charge, and you get your.
Well, you could do that on turn 1. Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, absolutely. You don't even have to do that. You could like literally run him up in a raider, like move the raider 14 inches up, and then fire and fade the raider to get close so you can shoot the grenade.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And then like literally sneakily get around and on turn 1 throw this grenade, and then your whole army gets advance and charge on turn 1.
That's cute, man. I like
right,
that.
So there's this. Yeah. Like especially if you're running like an army that has like 36 jet bikes or something, and like 40 Hellions, and you go, you know what? If you go first and you're like, okay, let's YOLO this. You know what I mean? And just like boost all your jet bikes up and have this person go around. Then just rolls to hit or whatever. Make sure he's a Cabal of Black Heart Archon so you can re-roll that one hit roll. So he doesn't miss. You know what I mean? And then and then just have the entire like 36 jet bikes just crash into the enemy in like a single in that first turn and just hit them so hard. Like I could see entire armies losing in one turn if you did stuff like that.
I'm about it, dude. I might try that out one time. All right, so let's
do it.
Let's talk about secondaries. You only get these secondaries if your entire army is Drukhari army, and there's 4 of them. Now I read through all 4, and I think the one that you'll probably see the most is what is the one where it's the same one that the Necrons have, like the Purge the Vermin, but it's not called Purge the Vermin. It's what is that called?
Herd the Prey.
Herd the Prey. There we go.
I disagree.
You don't think we're going to see a lot of that? I guess okay. So
it competes with Engage on All Fronts.
Yeah, it does.
Like it literally competes with the one that you're going to be taking most of the time.
So I guess let me just lay out my bias real quick. I played against a Necron army a couple of weeks ago at an RTT. He took Purge the Vermin. I didn't quite understand it. Like he racked up. He maxed it out like by turn 3. I was really confused. I thought it was super powerful. I saw it in this book and I was like, oh, I'm going to do the hell out of that. So, but you don't think that it just Engage on All Fronts is way easier? Like, you don't think that you have enough killing power to really push people out of the zones?
We do. However, I don't like having to be forced to kill things that I don't necessarily need to kill. Like the thing about Dark Eldar is you can kill things, but as a Dark Eldar player, I want to be in control of the units that are in my target priority because of the primary or things like that. And then having to kill like little chaff units that somebody put in there just to screw with my secondary is not exactly something that I want to go out of my way to do, because then it could detract me from playing the actual mission that I'm trying to play. Now, in some missions, it'll be fantastic. Like if you're playing an army that's slow, that castles in the right deployment, right? Like table quarters or whatever, that sort of, then that works a lot better, especially against someone who's like castling against you, because then you don't have to sort of extend your lines or overextend to get your Engage on All Front points. You can kind of concentrate your force and not get like shot up piecemeal, if that makes sense, like by spreading out and trying to take points. So it will be useful, right? I think that it competes with some of the ones that the army is already really good at, if that makes sense.
Okay, all right, that totally makes sense.
There's the other 3. You've got one where it's kill at the end of the battle round. You get 3 points if you've killed a monster or character in combat, and then you get 1 point if you've killed something else in close combat. So it's up to 4. So that one could be useful. However, it is definitely situational. And then you've got the one where witches killing beasts, cavalry, and monsters in close combat. You get 3 points per. That one's fantastic, especially with like, sulfur raiders and hounds and like Death Corps of Krieg cavalry everywhere nowadays. Like you that's one that you can easily max if you're going up against some of these like more weird lists that you're seeing. Like a space, or a Space Wolf player who decides to bring a bunch of like cavalry, right? You could literally like do that too. So I like that one. That one's really good because it's also beasts. So like, oh, thank you for bringing your single Cyber Wolf. That's 3 points for me. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then No Mercy No Respite, which is that's why I take Dark Creed. Against certain matchups, like demons or guard that have lots of multiple little units of guard, right? Like 60 guardsmen or whatever. Like you're gonna rack that one up really fast. So, and those two, Purge the Enemy and No Mercy No Respite, don't really compete with ones that we're already really good at. So I could see us using those more often than not.
I gotcha. Oh man, that makes me really sad. So I've been playing Guard for like 7 months now, and I do take Death Corps horses, and I do run 60 guardsmen. So like now that you're pointing these out to me, that really makes me sad. I'm glad I picked up this book and I'm playing Dark Eldar now because this is like super depressing. I already had a bad time as it is, and this just makes it worse.
They are situational though, so don't go about trying to like make Marines run away because you'll be sorely disappointed when they like just they don't run away.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, so I know for a fact that you've been playing games. I know that you've been playing a lot of Crusade games at the Mini Wargaming both. Yes. All right, cool, right on. So can you first game with the new codex, you've read the rules, you've got your army built up. What were your thoughts on that? What were your expectations? Did you meet them on the table? Can you just give us like an overall? We've got all of this information. We're packing it into one game. What did you get from what did you learn from your first game with this new book?
Well, first game I played Real Space Raiders. So I ran a Real Space Raider detachment just to see kind of like all that was about. And I took my Labyrinthine Cunning, Rid of the Living Muse Archon, like I did in the past. So like the reroll caddy. And I played against Sisters of Battle. So it was like a very, Dark Eldar already sort of play well into Sisters of Battle because we trade really well. But Sisters have a capacity to kill a whole bunch of Dark Eldar. So it was two things that kind of really stuck with me. First, Dark Eldar are still as fragile as they always have been, right? You're going to lose a bunch of your army. However, the depleted units can actually kill stuff. So it's really cool to actually see like your little units that have been taking casualties throughout the whole game physically do enough damage to make an impact on the game, even though you're taking casualties throughout the whole game, which I thought was awesome. And secondly, the value of mandrakes and the value of the incubi, like the Blades for Hire, like being able to have incubi sit there going, bring your Repentia on, because if you charge, there's a chance that they get to fight last, right? That was incredibly powerful. And just that alone really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that like having incubi around is going to be a huge thing when it comes to the game. And then mandrakes. That forward deploy is awesome. I'm loving forward deploying with the mandrakes, blocking out like Forlorn Fury Death Company or Raven Guard pre-moves or Invictor tactical war suits that want to get up in my face. You know what I mean? Like I can literally create some space to then really take advantage of my movement and range in the early game without having pressure put on me, so I can put pressure on the opponent. And that are good for like secondaries, like scramblers and engageable fronts and stuff like that. So those were like my initial takeaways from my first game.
I dig it. Did something that like in your playtesting has anything like weird that you found, like a weird interaction or something that was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. This is a really cool thing that happened in the game that you think you'll carry on into other games?
The impact of being able to trap things that are not infantry in combat with witches has come into play almost every single game I've played so far. and keeping witches alive from shooting is amazing. So being able to like tie up something they couldn't before is just so strong, because if you can keep witches from getting shot, they will do work for you. That and like the little trick, if you have the master succubus that's a show stealer, so she can bounce back and forth. Just something to make note is when you do consolidate her somewhere, make sure that if you're going to trap the unit that she moved away from with witches, make sure that you can then, in your opponent's turn, heroically intervene her back into that combat to fight again. So don't be use that, right?
That is dirty. I love that.
So just a little trick of the trade. Just make sure you be mindful of that like movement, so you can double dip with her like stupidness.
That's good. I love that. That's fantastic. I know also that John Lennon has been getting massive amounts of games in with the new codex, really trying to break the beast. Lennon, same question. Your first game in, what were your expectations? Did you find anything crazy? Just give me some detail.
Yeah, so I think I'm at 5 games now through the codex. I think I'm 4 with 1 against. They are oh man, the first test game was very much the unoptimized list. Let's just throw some initial concepts at the wall and just see what sticks. And oh boy, a lot of it sticks. The damage output was insane. The different buffs that you could stack up. That was just my immediate notice was like Hellions. Like I think like my first game, turn 1, 20 Hellions. Like my opponent pushed on me because they're like, well, I want to find out what you can do. And it was like, okay. And I just put 20 Hellions forward, put a lot of strats on them, picked up 10 Blade Guard, I think. And just like, all right, that's what this does. They've got different ways to win, which is terrifying. Because I've played 5 games, the Dark Eldar were 4-1 in those instances, and 2 of those wins have been Dark Eldar just absolutely wrecking people and just tabling them. Like the scoreboard doesn't matter, like it just doesn't matter at all. Where I twice I think I was down on primary, and then my opponent, like I was down like 10-15 points, and my opponent conceded after turn 3 or before turn 3 because the writing was on the wall and it was just over. And the amount of damage output that Dark Eldar can put into people who don't efficiently hit them first is insane. And I don't think that you need to rush people every time, because sometimes you're going to rush people, get hit too hard, and suddenly just collapse. And that's not a situation you ever want to be in. But there's just so much that you can actually do here that it is terrifying. Really, it is... There's so much damage, and the durability is about the same, but the speed, I think, is enough to get around it. The one loss was a combination of us not really having the models we wanted. Unfortunately, this was a game where it was on our YouTube stream, so we were trying to use models we physically owned and had painted. Therefore, there were only 2 raiders. We didn't use many racks. We didn't use much of any. We were using Talos, which are very quickly becoming not in the list. And they played against an efficient AdMech gunline, and unfortunately they just kind of rolled bad and then died, and it was just a combination of all things. So Dark Eldar are immortal still, but man, when they hit so hard. They can play the mission really well. I got tabled on turn 4 and won by 12 points with Dark Eldar in one of my games. Tabled on turn 4, still won by double digits, and I was like, okay, like. We play the mission so well, yeah.
But now that we can play the mission and kill things, like it's just like a match made in the Dark City depths, which is very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It is terrifying. It really is. They're incredibly strong. Oh man, it's weird because we've been playing them. We're trying to play them as efficiently as possible, and I think that Dark Eldar, they have so much. I think that not everyone's going to be able to get it out of them. I feel like this is going to be like the Genestealer Codex that ages better. Because where the Genestealer Codex was insanely strong when it came out, and a couple of good players got a ton out of it, the field didn't get as much out of it. Genestealer Cult still, only a couple of people are really doing well with it. Dark Eldar feels the same way, but it's deeper. where I think that if one thing gets nerfed, the Codex is going to stand the test of time a lot better than Genestealer Cult did. There's a couple things that I think are insane. 30 racks with 12 liquefier guns. Like, I just tabled Space Marines in about 2 turns with that. It's like, okay. Like, we talked about it, because turn 1, he did nothing, I did nothing. And he was like, look, like, this is just an unwinnable game right now. I'm like, okay, so let me test this. I'm going to rush you with the Dark Eldar, which is probably not the smartest thing to do. I'm going to just rush you with the Dark Eldar and see what happens. And I tabled him on turn 3. I was like, okay. Like, that's what happens, I guess. Yeah, like, you know, like at the end of turn 3, there was like an apothecary and a dreadnought in combat, and they were wrapped and just trapped, and then there was like 5 intercessors like sitting behind a wall, and that was it. And I hadn't lost anything that wasn't a transport. I was like, okay, like this is silly. I think that this is going to hurt Space Marines more than any FAQ that GW has ever done. This is it's gonna take some time to adapt to it, and there's enough tools in Marines that I'm not giving up on it, but there is a lot to process here.
I agree. So much stuff and so many combos. I'm just glad that I can like send 5 incubi into like 5 intercessors and just nuke them. Like being able to trade like that, to be like, I just need to kill those 5 Marines. Like that's just a great like measure for like killing potential for a unit, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and they do it so well. Yeah.
Right on. So, final question, because Dan is lost in the warp, I have to ask this on his behalf. Max number of racks in an army?
I think
10.
Oh, really? Only 10?
Yeah, just the Hemlock sites. That's literally, there's 10 Hemlock sites. That's all I'm running right now. Like that's in my list build, okay? 10 is max in my list, okay? I don't need more than that. 10 is fine.
Lennon, same question. 30.
Yeah, 6 units of 5, 2 liquefiers in each squad. Just 2d6 auto hits, strength 4, AP 2, damage 2, +1 to wound. You zip them around in raiders. You can either use them like a Cavalite squad, where you put them and 3 grotesques, or them and 5 incubi and a character in a raider, and then you've got OBSEC to jump out of it. You've got a couple random guys you don't care about to catch the bullets. Like, you can take 3 casualties without losing anything that matters, and you can still flame things. With raiders so fast with enhanced either sails, and you can advance the boat and then shoot out of it with the liquefier guns. You can just kill characters so quickly that it's terrifying, and that's what I've been doing. Is I just enhance either sails to raider full of racks, and I just put 4d6 auto hits into a chapter master, and he transhumaned, and he just died.
Love it. I would also talk about my games if I had any, but unfortunately, I'm a new Cyberite, just working my way up through the spires of Camaro, and I have not been able to play any Dark Eldar games, but I will get some in soon. And we should check in on Tim. I think you might have gotten. Hey, Tim, are you there?
Hey. Yep. Oh, yep. I'm
hey,
here.
Buddy.
Hey, I guess. Hey,
how you doing?
I'm good. I was I managed to break free. I was getting ready to be made into a living furniture. I think maybe a couch. But I managed to hop off the raider before they got me. Yeah, I've just been listening to all this, just kind of wondering what I'm gonna be losing to, especially as a Sisters player. I'm already kind of wrapping my head around how I'm gonna evolve my list for all this. So I guess Skari and John, just generically, if my list has X amount of support, X amount of board control, X amount of support, transports, shooting, and melee, just generically any faction, how should I adjust those levels? Should I drop some anti-tank for some more anti-personnel shooting? Should I add more transports? Should I go more board control, less board control? What do you guys think?
I'll let you go first, John.
All right, so my initial take is drop melee, add transports. You can't get charged by witches and expect good things to happen. You just can't. Like, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt badly, and there's nothing you can do about it. Unfortunately, yeah, I think you need to be in transports to get around what Dark Eldar can do, because if you can put a transport out of line of sight, Dark Eldar don't really do anything to that. They can charge in and kill the transport, and if you have a melee unit inside it, and again, emphasis on less melee, not no melee. You need some melee. You absolutely need some melee. You also need to be able to kill their transports, and that's the most important thing. If you can't kill the majority of the Dark Eldar vehicle party in 2 turns, I don't think that you get to play the game. I really don't. If you get hit first by Dark Eldar, it's gonna hurt. Take that on something that is either so tough that it can survive it, which there are very few things that can, or take it on something that you're not gonna mourn, and be able to hit back. And honestly, I think there's more emphasis on redeploys now rather than falling back. Like I'm immediately looking at like, all right, how do I take Death Watch with Storm Shields, teleport them around instead of falling back everywhere? And also, how fast can I kill these transports? How quickly can I move around the battlefield to kill these transports? What am I going to do? Because like, if the boats just run up behind a ruin on turn 1, and it's a very much like I'm in turn 2 charge range of every objective on the board, or, you know, everyone but one, and you just get 5 primary points while I get 10s and 15s and engage in all fronts and you do nothing. I can't just sit there, and I need to go kill boats, because if I move forward and don't kill boats, I'm getting hit, and there's nothing to be done. So it's a scary spot. You need to be able to kill boats. Indirect fire is going to be massive here, because raiders are tough, but they're not that tough. So if you can kill them, you're in a decent spot, and you have to be able to make a good attempt at killing raiders and convince your Dark Eldar opponent that you are capable of killing any raiders that you shoot, if you want to even have a chance. So you need to be in a transport so you don't get charged. You need to kill their transports. And if you can get to that point where you're the one dictating combats into the Dark Eldar, they are still made of, you know, hopes, dreams, and tissue paper. It's just that when they're the ones hitting you, their stats don't matter, because you're not overwatching and you're not swinging back by the time that you're dead. And whatever they consolidate into is something that they're not worried about, and then they'll trap that, like the Rhino. The Rhino's not hitting hard enough for this to matter. Skari, what you got?
Well, I will mirror and mimic what you said. If you want to play against Dark Eldar, number 1, you need to have chaff units, or units that can take overwatches. You need to invest in counterattack units that have multiple attacks. They don't have to be crazy strong, but like something that can just have, like, instead of Repentia, like Dark Eldar are probably more scared of Arcoflagellants, for example.
I love it.
Because they just have like a bazillion attacks, right? Like anything that just has multiple dice rolling, like Assault Intercessors, just chain swords. Just go in and try and roll as many dice as possible. They're toughness 3 and they have shit saves, right? So just try and force them to make as many saves as possible. As a rule of thumb, you have to crack open the transports. Like, if you do not kill the transports, the Dark Eldar army will murder your face. Like, you have to be able to kill raiders, venoms, and like just raiders and venoms. You have to be able to crack open the transports to get to the juicy insides. And invest in some sort of out of line of sight shooting if you have access to it, or something that can go and reach something behind, like something that's hidden. Especially if you're like Admech, for example, like those Scorpius Disintegrators are like money. Being able to like kill like Helions and Reaver jet bikes that are hiding behind a building before they jump out at you is going to be invaluable. So make sure you look into that, or trying to kill like the Hemoxites or the Kabalite warriors that are hiding on the backfield objective to force the Dark Eldar player to sort of redirect stuff to sort of like take that backfield objective to lay off some of the pressure. Instead of deep striking stuff when playing Dark Eldar, try and use strategic reserves. Because a Dark Eldar player, a savvy one, like myself, will block off the entire table and you won't be able to deep strike like anywhere. So just be careful with that.
Well,
that's it.
Right on, guys. Well, I think we're hitting we're hitting close to 2 hours, so I think that might be it. I wanted to Tim, unless you've got something else to say. It sounds like you're wanting to say something. What's up?
Yeah, sorry, we do actually have one Patreon question.
Ooh, let's hear it.
Yeah. He was asking about the Void Bombers. We haven't heard much about them. The plane itself, to me, doesn't seem crazy, especially for the points. But the bomb does seem like it could spike. He was interested if there's any viability if you do Void Bombers, especially if you do multiples. He was wondering if there's any value there, or if there's something he's not thinking of that might lead him to maybe want to skip it.
I think it's a great psychological tool. It's not exactly going to kill much, like as a plane with a couple of dark lances. Like it might, you know what I mean? And then the missiles are on top of that. So like, don't expect it to do anything like super fancy. However, though, just paying the points to put something on the table that can punish your opponent for huddling, you know, I think is crazy strong. Like if you're playing at Space Marines and they're like, yes, I'm gonna do my little castle with all this stuff behind this building, and then you go first and drop a bomb and literally like spike those 4-ups and do d6 mortal wounds to like everything and hit a couple of characters on the 5s or whatever, like that could be incredibly punishing to an opponent. So just to have that threat of it potentially happening and maybe forcing your opponent to spread out is worth it, because Dark Eldar love it when people spread out and then they can use their speed to like isolate and destroy pockets of the enemy army that are like not supported by other things. So use it more as a psychological tool, and then if it does ever spike for you, then just have fun with it.
Yeah, it's extra money. So do you think you shell out the sub 200 points for one? Just for one?
But I think if you're gonna do one, just do one. I don't think it's worth taking the 2. I think it's just take the 1 if you're going to do it.
Right on. Tim, who asked that question?
That was Justin, one of our local guys. He's a Space Wolf and Dark Eldar player.
Tight. Well, thank you, Justin, for the question. We really appreciate it, man. But yeah, so I do believe that is the official end. So I wanted to thank everybody for listening. I wanted to thank Skari for taking his time from flensing people to come and talk to us lowly, regular people. It was a really good conversation. I really appreciate you taking your time out to talk with us, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was an absolute blast. Love the podcast and what you're doing. And anybody listening, head on over to Patreon and support these guys to help them do what they are continuing to do for the hobby.
And right back to you, everybody. Skari does have a Patreon as well. You get a lot more from his. I do believe you get like dice. Do you like do like a little bit of coaching on the side? You get access to his videos earlier. Like
I do coaching through the Art of War mainly.
Yeah.
So if you want like to get me as a coach, make sure you head on over to the Art of War 40k, and you know I'm on there as one of the available coaches, and then I do have the Patreon. It's mostly like a community of people from all over the world. So if you like to chat and hang out and ask questions and get some exclusive little videos and stuff every week, then yeah, come on in.
Sounds good. Well, once again, thanks everybody for listening, and we will catch you next time. We will have Richard Siegler on to discuss Blood Angels and Necrons. It's going to be a blast. So thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.